Hello. Today, myself, Lauren Ortiz, and Sophie Gagnon will be presenting our final project surrounding the conspiracy theories of Marilyn Monroe's death, peeling back the layers of a Hollywood tragedy. First, we'll begin with a short introduction to the main conspiracy theory, including the main actors, what allegedly happened, and the motive. Often described as the most idolized blonde bombshell of the 18th century, Marilyn Monroe was a prominent Hollywood actress between the mid-1940s and early 60s. Born Norma Jean Mortensen in 1926, the young actress unfortunately passed away at just 36 years of age in 1962. The official police report deemed her death a probable suicide by drug overdose. Soon enough, conspiracy theories surrounding Monroe's death emerged, the most prominent being a planned assassination by the Kennedy family. Who were the Kennedys? John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States from 1961 to 1963. Allegations concerning a possible affair between John and Monroe began to circulate following her infamous performance of Happy Birthday, Mr. President, just 3 months before her death in August. Rumor had also circulated that the starlet had also been having an affair with John's brother, Robert Kennedy, the then Attorney General of the U.S. Although the conspiracy theories vary, they almost always include the Kennedys to some capacity, either through a direct execution of the assassination or the conceptualization of one. The motivation behind the supposed attack usually depicts Monroe as a liability, as she supposedly kept a diary detailing her affairs with the Kennedys and/or incriminating information concerning their family. Most theories assert that the murder plot received help from other prominent figures, such as the FBI, the police, and/or the coroner's office. Now we'll be moving on to the concepts, or rather reasons why people might believe in this theory. Concept number 1, proportionality bias. This is often seen as the belief that significant events must have major causes. Marilyn Monroe's death was not only a shock to the world, but also a great tragedy. Her fame and idolization made it difficult for people to accept that a woman of her status was either battling issues as common as substance abuse and/or a desire to take her own life. The dramatization of an assassination conspiracy would be more fitting for the star, rather than the all too common reality of mental health and addiction struggles. This concept is especially prominent in celebrity deaths, as people have a difficult time believing that someone so immensely famous might die of something so perceivably ordinary. The second concept is the need for cognitive closure. This is an epistemic motive, often described as the human desire to acquire knowledge or definite answers to ambiguous situations or problems. There was, and still remains to be, discomfort surrounding Monroe's death. Certain aspects of her death were deemed ambiguous. First, she had recently faced controversy for the affair rumors with the Kennedys. Rumors that her stomach had been empty during her autopsy despite having overdosed on barbiturates. There were conflicting reports of when her body was found, and there was a refusal from close friends to accept that her death was either self-imposed or desired. This created a series of unanswered questions and uncertainty, thereby motivating individuals to create theoretical answers to already theoretical questions. Followers and fans of Monroe's work were ultimately dissatisfied with the perceived ambiguity of her case. They created what they believed to be more certain narratives as a means to feel more at ease with her passing and to move on.
There are some powerful psychological concepts that explain why people are drawn to conspiracies, and today I'll focus on three of them: the conjunction fallacy, distrust of authority, and confirmation bias. Let's start with the conjunction fallacy. This is a kind of thinking error or cognitive bias where people mistakenly believe that two events happening together is more likely than just one event happening on its own. In reality, that's not how probability works. When you add more details to a story, it actually becomes less likely, not more. But people don't always follow logic when they're processing information. For example, when people hear that Marilyn Monroe was killed in a plot involving the Kennedys and secret CIA operations, they often believe it more than the simpler explanation that she died of an overdose. Why? Because the conspiracy story is richer. It has more drama, it's more emotionally engaging, and it feels like it explains more. It gives people a sense of meaning, like her death had to be part of something bigger. A basic overdose, on the other hand, might feel anticlimactic, even though it's far more probable based on the facts. This leads us to the second concept, distrust of authority. This is the idea that people are suspicious or skeptical of people in power, whether that's the government, the media, the police, or other major institutions. And this distrust didn't come out of nowhere. After the 1960s, events like the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, and the FBI's secret surveillance programs made the public deeply suspicious. People began to believe that governments and other authorities were lying to them, or even actively covering things up. So, in Marilyn Monroe's case, when the authorities said she died by suicide, many people didn't believe them. They thought, of course they'd say that, they're trying to protect someone. And because Marilyn was linked to powerful figures like President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert, people became even more suspicious. It wasn't just that she died, it was who she was connected to. That made people more likely to believe that something shady happened behind the scenes. And even small inconsistencies in her case became evidence of a cover-up. For instance, the ambulance wasn't called right away. Some reports were delayed or went missing. These details might have simple explanations, but to someone who already distrusts authority, they become signs that something was being hidden. And once you start thinking that way, it's easy to believe that police, doctors, and even politicians might all be in on it. This is how conspiracy theories grow. One tiny crack in the official story can be used to build an entirely different narrative. Now, this brings me to the third and final concept, confirmation bias. This is one of the most powerful forces behind conspiracy beliefs. Confirmation bias means that we tend to look for, remember, and believe information that supports what we already think, and we tend to ignore or forget anything that doesn't fit. So if someone already believes that Marilyn was murdered, they're going to notice all the suspicious details like her missing diary, her relationships with the Kennedys, or the delayed ambulance. They'll focus on those facts and see them as proof that something went wrong. At the same time, they'll downplay or ignore the facts that support the official explanation, like the high levels of drugs in her system, her long struggle with depression, and her past suicide attempts. It's not that they're being dishonest, it's just how human brains naturally work. We like stories that match our beliefs, and we filter out the rest. And when you combine these 5 concepts, the proportionality bias, need for cognitive closure, conjunction fallacy, distrust of authority, and confirmation bias, you can see how a conspiracy theory can take hold and become really hard to let go of. People aren't necessarily trying to spread misinformation. They may truly believe they're uncovering the truth, but often they're being guided by these deeply human ways of thinking. So, when we look at the conspiracy theories surrounding Marilyn Monroe's death, it's not just about whether she died of suicide or was murdered, it's about how we make sense of information, how we decide who to trust, and how our own beliefs shape the way we see the world. Understanding these psychological patterns doesn't mean we have to accept every official story without question, but it does help us become more aware of our own thinking and maybe a little more cautious about jumping to conclusions, especially when a story feels true just because it's dramatic or emotionally satisfying. Thank you.